I think number 3, Harvey Elliott is a fucking scouser. I'm so made up for Harvey.
Yeah.
I think he's a player who, and you know, Jurgen talked about this when he left as well, that one of his biggest regrets that he didn't get to play Harvey Elliott more. I think he's a player who's so undermined by circumstance in general, really, and it's been the same thing this season. Like Slot mentioned in his post-match again, that basically the reason Elliott doesn't play this season is because Szoboszlai and Salah are 90-minute players. Like Szoboszlai and Salah are 2 players who you think can get you a goal. You keep them on the pitch because they're all running power, they're all technique, they're all skill, and they might pop up with a goal here and there. And that's the reason that Harvey probably hasn't seen as much game time. And also, you know, they're 2 of the most important players. I think he's, you know, been a little bit undermined by the circumstance recently of the documentary and what sort of, you know, come out with his dad and the narrative around that, really, in terms of how that's impacted people's perception of him as a player. So for him to come off the bench last night and be such a, you know, he shouldn't be an unlikely hero for Liverpool, really. We've seen the impact that he can make off the bench, but for him to come off the bench and get that sort of tag of being the unlikely hero, I just came away from that being like, he's right, lad.
Yeah, still only 21. It's like, it's unbelievable. And like you said there, Josh, that's not the first time he's won games for this football club. It's probably the biggest one, but I remember, you know, us watching a game in December last year at Crystal Palace where he comes on and sort of wins it. And he has big impacts off the bench. And you talk about him being unfortunate. I think what needs to be remembered, I think that's been a little bit forgotten as well, is that he's a forward player who Klopp and Pep Linders, and I think Pep Linders probably more pushed it, looked to convert into a midfielder and looked to sort of play a little bit deeper and have, because that suited how they wanted to play. Arne Slot comes in and he doesn't need to agree with that. So he doesn't need to see the versatility. So I think one of the reasons that Elliott plays as much as he does last year is because of his versatility, because of his quality. You know, there's obviously injuries as well that means he gets his opportunity and then he grabs it and sort of stays in the team. But I think, you know, I think Slot's come in and looked at him and maybe not necessarily agreed with how Klopp and Pep Linders wanted to use him, and that's fine. That is up to him, and it's not like this kid's been a midfielder his whole life, and then suddenly Slot's not fancying him. It's like I say, it needs to be remembered that it's a relatively new recent thing that suited how the manager wants to play at that time, and I think Slot's come in and said, actually, I see him more like this, and Mo Salah's been unbelievable this season. So I think if you were to ask Arne Slot, where do you think his best position is? I think he'd say right forward. I think that's what he'd say. And I think he'd say, yeah, I can see how he could work in a midfield position, you know, an attacking midfield position as well. But then you've got Szoboszlai there as well. But I think his biggest issue is that Salah's playing so well and he's so relentless. He hardly ever takes Salah off. He took him off last night because he didn't have a particularly great game. He was starting to tire, and then he gives the ball away a couple of times.
He was rushing a few things, wasn't he?
And then the manager just goes, I'm better off with Harvey now because he'll keep the ball.
Yep.
And I'm sure he's not throwing him on to get a winning goal, but I think he's thinking Harvey will keep the ball for me here, and Mo's not. And so he puts him on in that situation. You know, if Mo was having a bit of a tougher season or whatever, then there might be more opportunities for him, similar with you know, Szoboszlai. But sometimes it's not like, oh, he doesn't rate him or he's not having him. It's just like what the manager sees in each position and what skills that he wants in those positions. And Elliott's just ended up being a bit sort of left out. But it's credit to him and his scousers that he's, you know, you've not heard one people complain from him. The only time you've heard anything from him at all was when there was stories about him going away, and then he come out and was like, nah, I'm staying. That's the only time you've heard anything from him, really. He's just kept his head down. You can imagine he's training well, and so you're thrilled that he gets this big moment. Like, you obviously, you know, it's a big moment for the team, and that's the main thing. The main thing is the team and what the goal means for our Champions League hopes. But for him in particular, if you are looking at individuals, you know, it's huge for him. And to get a goal in less than a minute after coming on, like, your head must feel like it's going to explode, and he knows it's a massive goal. And yeah, delighted for him, and no surprise that, I mean, I think the manager deserves a lot of credit for how he's kept everyone together, and there's players who've played a lot and there's players who've hardly played, and they all feel like they're putting in equal amounts. And when something happens, like there was I think a few weeks ago where Darwin gets a bit of a cob on over a couple of things, and that was a big deal, but it was almost a big deal because it's so rare. Do you know what I mean? And so, if I mean, looking back, it was a bit of something or nothing, really. He comes on a couple of games, could run a bit more. It was frustrating at the time, but I think it was almost made bigger by the fact that it is so rare in this Liverpool team, and so as a squad, they deserve credit for that. Do you know what I mean? you know, you watch football teams where half of them don't run every game, and so one guy, one sub for 10 minutes, not putting it in. It's like this big, like, wow, fucking hell, do you know what I mean? Like, what's going on? So we're lucky, really, that we've got the manager that we've got who's able to do that, but I think Harvey just be like that anyway, because I think he's the person he is.
Absolutely, yeah. Honourable mention to Darwin Núñez for the assist and for just winning his battles in general there, and especially to the manager, as you say, for, you know, using these players and making sure they seize their opportunities.